Title: Animal Eat. Author: Kayode Ike. Date: Saturday, May 18, 2025. Prologue. The air in Inwood Forest on that fateful Saturday, May 18, 2025, hummed with a deceptive serenity. Sunlight, fragmented by a canopy of ancient oaks and towering pines, dappled the winding paths. Birdsong provided a soothing symphony, a stark contrast to the whispers that had begun to circulate through the nearby communities, whispers of disappearances, of a darkness lurking just beyond the well-trodden trails. Inwood was a place of duality. For most, it was a sanctuary, a public haven of verdant beauty, where families strolled, joggers found their rhythm, and nature offered a fleeting escape from the urban sprawl. Yet, deep within its heart, hidden behind faded, ignored signs and a natural, impenetrable tangle of undergrowth, lay the forbidden zone. A sprawling, untamed wilderness, it was a sanctuary only for its true, wild inhabitants, the bears who roamed its shadowed glades, the wolves whose eyes gleamed in the twilight, the creatures of tooth and claw who knew only the primal law of survival. It was here, in this shadowed other half, that Bayo sought his perverse communion. Bayo, 37 years old, moved through the sunlit trails like a shadow divorced from its source. His eyes, sunken and intense, constantly scanned the faces of strangers, searching not for connection, but for opportunity. His mind, a labyrinth of twisted logic, latched onto a singular, monstrous desire, to become a bear. Not figuratively, but literally. He believed, with an unshakable conviction born of madness, that by feeding the forest's apex predators with human flesh, he could somehow transcend his own humanity, shed his skin, and be reborn as the ultimate predator. A bear, a people-eating bear. He was a predator in waiting, and Inwood Forest was his hunting ground. Chapter 1. The First Offering. The first time Zezel saw Bayo, he was leaning against a moss-covered oak, watching the joggers go by with an unnerving stillness. Zezel, 25, a student of modern art, had come to the forest seeking inspiration, a quiet corner to clear his head. He'd noticed the man's intense gaze, but dismissed it as eccentric. As Zezel paused by a small stream, sketching in his notebook, a voice, low and gravelly, broke the quiet. "Do you believe we are born to die?" Zezel looked up. It was Bayo, standing just a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Well, yes, eventually, I suppose. It's the cycle of life." Zezel tried to smile politely, already feeling a prickle of unease. There was something in Bayo's eyes, an unsettling hunger. "The cycle," Bayo echoed, his voice gaining a strange resonance. "Yes, and some cycles are more complete than others. I want to be like them, you see." He gestured vaguely towards the deeper woods. "Like the animals in this forest. Powerful, primal." Zezel closed his sketchbook, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Right, well, I prefer the more civilized aspects of the cycle, myself." He started to back away slowly. Bayo took a step closer. "I want to be a bear, Zezel. A bear that eats people. Imagine the strength, the freedom." He paused, his gaze boring into Zezel. "Your death is near, Zezel." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Zezel's composure. This wasn't just weird. It was dangerous. He spun on his heel and bolted, adrenaline flooding his veins. His feet pounded on the dirt path, the sounds of the forest blurring into a desperate symphony of escape. He didn't hear the soft thwip of the tranquilizer dart. He felt only a sudden, burning sting in his leg, then a wave of profound dizziness, an inexplicable heaviness that pulled him down. The trees spun, the sky inverted, and Inwood Forest swallowed him whole into a sudden, deep oblivion. Bayo stood over the unconscious Zezel, a grim satisfaction settling on his face. He quickly slung Zezel's limp body over his shoulder, the weight surprisingly manageable with his own wiry strength. He moved with a practiced ease, veering off the public path, pushing through thorny shrubs and low-hanging branches, deeper and deeper into the forbidden heart of the forest. The air grew thicker, wilder, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves more potent. He came to a small clearing, hidden by a dense cluster of towering pines. This was his altar. He gently laid Zazol's body on the forest floor, then ascended a nearby rocky outcrop, a natural high hill that offered a clear, if macabre, view. He sat, cross-legged, his dark eyes fixed on the motionless form below, waiting. It didn't take long. The scent of fresh meat, of human blood, carried on the subtle forest breeze, was an irresistible summons. A low growl rippled through the undergrowth, followed by the rustle of leaves. First, a lean, grey wolf emerged from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with ancient hunger. Then, the ground seemed to tremble as a massive, shaggy bear lumbered into view, its nostrils flaring. Bayo watched, his breath held, as the wolf and the bear closed in, their primal instincts overriding any fear of the strange, still offering. He saw the first ripping of flesh, heard the wet tearing sounds, the snarls and grunts as they gorged themselves. A primal thrill coursed through Bayo, a dark, exhilarating sensation that he interpreted as transformation. Each bite, each tear, brought him closer, he believed, to his ultimate becoming. He was feeding his future self. When the last scraps were devoured, and the animals dispersed back into the wilderness, Bayo descended from his perch, a strange, serene smile on his lips. Zazol was gone, consumed, and Bayo felt a step closer to his bare hood. He cleaned his tranquilizer gun meticulously, then turned towards the well-trodden path, already planning his next offering. The hunger, his hunger, was far from sated. Chapter 2. The Family Outing. The missing persons reports had been growing steadily, a chilling undercurrent beneath the placid surface of daily life. The local news ran segments, asking for public vigilance, but offering no answers. Inwood Forest, once a beloved escape, now carried a subtle taint of apprehension. Yet, life, as it always did, went on. Kojo, 38, a man whose life revolved around the vibrant energy of his two daughters, believed in facing fear with practicality. He refused to let the whispers of danger steal their simple joys. "We'll stick to the main paths, girls," he'd promised, packing their picnic basket. "And we'll be together the whole time. Nothing to worry about." Mary, 12, was adventurous, her bright eyes always seeking out something new. Chloe, 14, was more reserved, her mind often lost in the pages of a book, but she adored her father and trusted his judgment. Together, they walked through Inwood, the laughter of the girls echoing pleasantly through the trees, banishing for a time the shadows of concern. They found a sun-dappled clearing near a babbling brook, perfect for their picnic. As Kojo spread the blanket and the girls unpacked sandwiches, a man emerged silently from the trees, his presence jarring the peaceful scene. It was Bayo. He moved with an unnerving grace, his eyes, as always, fixed and intense. "A pleasant day for feeding, wouldn't you say?" he said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. Kojo looked up, a frown creasing his brow. "Excuse me." "Feeding," Bayo repeated, his gaze sweeping over Mary and Chloe, lingering a moment too long. "The forest is hungry. Don't you feel it?" He took a step closer. "I'd like to be a bear. A great, powerful bear. It's truly all I wish for." Kojo felt a prickle of alarm. The man was clearly unhinged. He put a protective hand on Chloe's shoulder, pulling her slightly closer. Mary, sensing the tension, stopped unwrapping her sandwich. "We're just trying to enjoy our lunch, sir," Kojo said, his voice firm but polite. "Perhaps you should find your own spot." "Oh, but this is my spot," Bayo said, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "And I have a question for you, Kojo." He knew Kojo's name. A tremor of true fear ran through Kojo. "How do you know your death is near?" That was it. Kojo grabbed both girls' hands. "All right, that's enough. We're leaving. Leave us alone." He tugged them away from the picnic, heading back towards the main path, his brisk pace growing urgent. Bayo didn't follow immediately. He simply stood there, watching them go, a singular, predatory focus in his eyes. Then, he raised his voice, a shout that echoed eerily through the trees. Kojo, do you know your death is near? Kojo didn't look back. He just pulled his daughters faster. The air was suddenly charged, no longer peaceful but crackling with menace. Then, a sharp whip sliced through the air. Kojo felt a searing pain in his thigh, a surprising, heavy impact that buckled his knees. He stumbled, then fell, his vision blurring, the world tilting precariously. A sudden, crushing wave of sedation washed over him, a powerful drug designed to bring down even the largest of beasts. "Daddy!" Mary screamed, her voice piercing the sudden silence. "Dad!" Chloe cried, her eyes wide with terror as she watched her father collapse. They were frozen for a moment, shocked into immobility. Then, as Bayo began to advance, a sinister grin spreading across his face, a primal instinct took over. Chloe grabbed Mary's hand. "Run, Mary, run!" Without a second thought, they broke free from their father's unconscious form and bolted. Not back towards the safety of the public paths, but deeper into the unfamiliar, forbidden part of Inwood Forest, the dense woods that promised only wilderness and unknown dangers. They ran, fueled by pure, unadulterated fear, the sounds of Bayo's footsteps receding behind them, replaced by the pounding of their own hearts and the rustle of leaves beneath their frantic feet. Bayo watched them go, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes, but his primary target lay at his feet. He bent down, hoisted Kojo's substantial weight over his shoulder, and turned towards the hidden trails that led to his inner sanctum, to the waiting hunger of the forest. He would deal with the girls later. The bears were waiting. Chapter 3. The Primal Law. Bayo dragged Kojo's limp form deeper into the forbidden zone, the familiar path of broken twigs and overgrown brush leading him to his clearing. He laid Kojo down, a heavy offering, and ascended his rocky vantage point, the anticipation a feverish hum in his veins. The bears would come. They always did, and with each feast, he drew closer to his beastly apotheosis. But Bayo had made a mistake. His shot had been hurried, his focus split between securing Kojo and the fleeing girls. The tranquilizer dart had grazed Kojo's thigh, delivering only a partial dose of the powerful sedative. Enough to bring him down, yes, to create the illusion of complete unconsciousness, but not enough to render him truly insensible. As Bayo settled on his hill, his back to Kojo's body, his gaze fixed on the dense woods where he expected the bears to emerge, Kojo's eyes flickered open. His head throbbed, his limbs felt heavy as lead, but the fog in his mind was slowly, terrifyingly, lifting. The scent of damp earth and something metallic, blood, filled his nostrils. He was lying on the ground, and above him, looking away, sat the man who had shot him. Bayo. Kojo could hear the man's shallow breathing, sense his rapt attention focused elsewhere. His own heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He was paralyzed by the drugs, but not completely. He could feel the cold earth beneath him, the rough fabric of his shirt. He was alive, and he was in mortal danger. His eyes, still hazy, drifted to Bayo's back, then to the tranquilizer gun lying carelessly beside the man, a dark, ominous shape against the mossy rock. A surge of primal instinct, cold and desperate, flooded Kojo's system. He was a father. His daughters were out there, somewhere, lost in this terrifying wilderness, and he had to get to them. With a superhuman effort, fueled by paternal love and sheer terror, Kojo began to move. Inch by agonizing inch, he dragged himself towards the oblivious figure of Bayo. The partial sedation made every move a monumental struggle, his muscles screaming in protest, but he pushed through the pain, the numbness, the encroaching darkness. He reached Bayo's feet. His right arm, still heavy but gaining strength, snaked out. He gripped Bayo's ankle, then with a surge of adrenaline, pushed. Bayo was caught completely by surprise. The unexpected force, coming from the very prey he thought incapacitated, threw him off balance. He let out a startled cry, a mix of shock and rage, as he tumbled forward, losing his footing on the slippery rock. He fell clumsily, not off the sheer cliff, but down a short, steep slope of loose scree and entangled roots. A sickening crack echoed through the clearing. Bayo shrieked, a sound of agony and disbelief. He landed twisted at the bottom of the slope, his right leg bent at an unnatural angle, a sharp bone piercing through his trousers. Blood, dark and arterial, immediately began to seep into the forest floor. The pain was excruciating, searing through Bayo's delusion, replacing his bear lust with raw, human terror. He tried to move, to stand, but his leg was useless, a mangled mess. He lay there, whimpering, the blood pooling around him, its coppery scent instantly broadcasting his vulnerability. The forest, which had been his silent accomplice, now turned against him. The scent of fresh blood, human blood, carried on the breeze, was a siren call to the very creatures he had sought to appease. A low growl rumbled from the shadows. Then another, and another. They emerged silently, spectral shapes in the dappled light. Not one bear, but two. Massive, powerful, their eyes gleaming with ancient hunger. Behind them, a trio of wolves, the gaunt frames moving with predatory grace, their fangs glinting. They had come for the feast. Bayo looked at them, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization. This was not transformation. This was merely the next stage of the cycle. And he was the prey. He screamed, a desperate, pathetic sound, as the largest bear lumbered towards him, its hot breath washing over his face. The wolves, less patient, moved in from the sides, their snarls tearing through the air. The forest, ever impartial, enacted its primal law. Bayo, the hunter, was now the hunted. And the animals devoured him alive. Kojo, still partially sedated, watched in numb horror from his position near the top of the slope. He saw the blur of teeth and claws, heard the wet, tearing sounds, the final, gurgling cries of the man who had been his tormentor. It was a brutal, terrifying spectacle, but survival, not vengeance, was his only driving force. When it was over, when the animals dispersed, leaving only a gruesome, bloody stain on the forest floor, Kojo pushed himself up. He was still unsteady, his muscles protesting, but the adrenaline coursing through him kept him moving. He crawled to the top of the slope, reaching for the tranquilizer gun Bayo had dropped. His fingers closed around the cold, unfamiliar metal. It was heavy, but it was his only weapon now. His only hope. His daughters. They were still out there. In this dangerous, hungry forest. He had to find them. Chapter 4. The Hunter's Return. The forest, now cleansed of Bayo's toxic presence, felt strangely different to Kojo. It was no longer merely a place of danger, but a living entity, its wildness amplified. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves, became a potential threat. The partial sedation was slowly wearing off, leaving him with aching muscles, a throbbing thigh, and a mind sharpened by terror. He called out, "Mary, Chloe." His voice was hoarse, swallowed by the vastness of the trees. He had no idea which way his daughters had run. The public path was behind him, in the opposite direction of this deep wilderness. They had fled into the heart of the beast. He moved, slowly at first, then picking up speed, cutting through trails he'd never dared tread before. His fatherly instinct was a compass, stronger than any fear. He remembered Chloe's love for exploring the overgrown parts of the forest, her fascination with hidden nooks and crannies, and made a wild guess. They wouldn't have run in a straight line. They would have tried to find cover, perhaps a natural shelter. He pushed through thorny thickets, past ancient, gnarled trees, the tranquilizer gun clutched tightly in his hand. The weight of it was strangely comforting, a promise of defense. He listened intently, for any sound, a whimper, a cry, even a whisper. Time ceased to exist, replaced by a desperate, relentless pursuit. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, followed by a low, guttural growl, and another. He crashed through a dense wall of rhododendron bushes, emerging into a small, overgrown clearing dominated by a cluster of jagged rocks. And there they were, Chloe and Mary. They were huddled together, pressed against the cold stone, their faces streaked with tears and dirt, their shoulders shaking. And surrounding them, their eyes glinting in the gloom, were three lean, hungry wolves. One of them, larger than the others, was already edging closer, its lip curled back in a silent snarl, its fangs bared. "Get away from them!" Kojo roared, his voice raw with fury and terror. He raised the tranquilizer gun, an unfamiliar weapon, aimed it wildly, and squeezed the trigger. The tranquilizer gun, designed for quiet, stealthy incapacitation, still made a surprisingly loud thwack. As the dart fired, it wasn't the roar of a traditional firearm, but in the relative silence of the forest, it was an explosive sound. One wolf yelped, startled, and bolted instantly into the undergrowth. Another hesitated for a fraction of a second, then followed, disappearing into the shadows. The largest wolf, the one nearest Mary, flinched but didn't retreat. Its eyes locked onto Kojo for a brief, menacing moment, then it spun, its instincts honed on the closest, most vulnerable prey, Mary. With a terrifying speed, it lunged. Mary screamed, her small arm thrown up instinctively to protect her face. The wolf's jaws clamped down, not on her arm, but on her sleeve, tearing the fabric, but its fangs scraped flesh. A fresh, sharp cry of pain ripped from Mary's throat as the wolf tried to pull her down, to tear off more than just cloth. Kojo didn't hesitate. He knew he had only one dart left, maybe two. He aimed carefully this time, focusing on the wolf's powerful shoulder. He squeezed the trigger. Thwack. The dart found its mark. The wolf yelped, a high-pitched, surprised sound, and instantly released Mary's arm. Its movements became erratic, clumsy, the powerful sedative quickly taking hold. It stumbled, whimpered, and then collapsed onto the forest floor, its eyes glazing over, its body going limp. Kojo dropped the gun and rushed to his daughters. Chloe was already holding Mary, who was sobbing uncontrollably, clutching her bleeding arm. "Daddy," Chloe cried, burying her face in his chest. "Mary, my brave girl," Kojo whispered, his voice thick with emotion, pulling both of them into a tight embrace. He checked Mary's arm. The wolf hadn't bitten deep, but there were painful scrapes and a small, bloody tear where its teeth had broken the skin. It would need disinfectant and bandages, but it wasn't life-threatening. They were alive, all of them. "We need to go," Kojo said, his voice firm, his eyes scanning the surrounding woods, wary of any lingering danger. He slung Mary's arm over his shoulder, Chloe clinging to his other side. He knew the way out now. The path he had taken, brutal as it was, led back towards the known, towards safety. Step by painful step, they pushed through the encroaching twilight. The forest, which had been a place of horror, began to regain some of its natural, indifferent beauty as they neared its edge. The sounds of traffic, distant at first, grew steadily louder, a beacon of civilization. Finally, they stumbled out of the tree line, onto the paved road, blinking in the artificial light of a street lamp. Kojo fell to his knees, clutching his daughters tightly, tears streaming down his face, tears of relief, of exhaustion, of the profound, overwhelming joy of survival. Inwood Forest had tried to consume them, but thanks to Kojo's bravery, his unwavering fatherly love, and a stroke of unexpected luck, they had made it out. The whispers would fade, the reports would cease. Inwood Forest, for all its wildness and the dark chapter it had just closed, was safe again. Its hunger appeased, for now. The end. Story by Kayode E.